Hello, hello. Welcome or welcome back to English Extras. I'm Jean. I've been an English teacher since 2019, and this is the podcast that takes you beyond textbook English. If you want to sound more natural, then you're in the right place. I'm here to give you real-world English, cultural tips, and smart strategies to boost your fluency. So, are you ready? Let's learn some English. Today, we are talking about a holiday often referred to as America's birthday, but officially called Independence Day. I'm talking about the 4th of July. This is a holiday characterized by American flags everywhere, fireworks in the sky, barbecuing, and family get-togethers. For this episode, like all of my holiday episodes, I'm going to start with the history of this holiday and then tell you about our modern traditions. So, without further ado, let's get into it. For our history lesson today, I'm going to take you back to colonial America. Colonial America refers to a time in history when America was not an independent country, but rather a collection of British colonies. A colony is a group of people who go to a foreign place and establish their lives there, but they are still ruled by their home country. So, starting in the late 15th century, in other words, the late 1400s, British people began arriving in America. Even though they were on a different continent, they were still ruled by Great Britain. So, their settlement, meaning the place where they built structures and began living their lives, their settlement was considered a part of Great Britain. This would continue for several hundred years. British people would make the dangerous trip across the Atlantic Ocean to arrive somewhere along the east coast of present-day America. But despite being thousands of miles away from England, the British government still had power over them and could establish and enforce laws to govern them from afar. This started creating some problems because the British government was creating and enforcing laws for the rapidly growing colonies, and the people in the colonies, called colonists, had no voice or influence of any kind over the creation of those laws. There was also another problem. The British Empire was deeply in debt. Debt is when you have spent money you don't have. Usually debt comes from borrowing money from someone and then you have to pay them back. The British Empire had fought several wars, and wars are expensive, so the British Empire needed money. And they thought the British American colonies would be a great place to get that money from. Tensions began to rise in the mid-1700s, especially when the British government created a collection of laws called the Townshend Acts. These acts were 5 different laws passed in 1767 and 1768, and the colonists were not happy about them, especially with the Revenue Act of 1767, which established a tax on resources like glass, lead, and perhaps most damningly, tea. The opposition to this was fierce. There were protests and boycotts. A boycott is a form of protest when people collectively agree to not participate in a certain activity. Usually that means refusing to go to a specific place, refusing to spend money at a certain business, etc. The purpose of boycotts is usually to have an economic impact to oppose certain conditions. In this specific case, the colonists boycotted companies that imported goods from England. But there were also protests in the streets where people debated and discussed these laws. Some of these protests became violent. The most famous example of this is the Boston Massacre in 1770. So, this problem between the British American colonies and the British government continued. The British government continued to impose taxes on the colonists, even though the colonists were not being represented in the British government. The famous phrase that comes from this time of protest is no taxation without representation. So basically saying, if you want to tax us, we need to have a voice. There were other key moments leading up to the creation of America as a country, and I won't go into a lot of detail here, but I'll mention these events just in case you'd like to learn more about them on your own. These key events included the Boston Tea Party, the creation of the First Continental Congress, the beginning of the American Revolutionary War with the battles of Lexington and Concord, and the publication of Common Sense by Thomas Paine. All of this leads up to Thomas Jefferson submitting the first draft of the Declaration of Independence to the Second Continental Congress on June 28, 1776. A declaration is like an announcement. It has a very official connotation. In this case, a group of colonists were declaring to the government of the British Empire that, no thank you, we will not be a part of your empire anymore. After days of debate, the Declaration of Independence was adopted by the Second Continental Congress on July 4th, 1776. This day officially marks the beginning of the United States of America as a country. Of course, England didn't like that, so the War for American Independence continued until 1783, when the Treaty of Paris was signed, a document that said Great Britain recognized the United States as a separate country. The Declaration of Independence had a really profound impact on the American psyche, meaning a lot of the ideas and phrases in the document influenced the way Americans think. For example, the idea of unalienable rights. That's a fancy word, so let's talk about it. An unalienable right means something everyone should have by default, automatically, and they cannot be taken away. Famously, it says these rights include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That phrase helped create a sense of national identity. We celebrate Independence Day because it symbolizes freedom, democracy, and national pride. So here is what a characteristic 4th of July might look like. During the day, you might do some shopping. Like so many American holidays, businesses take advantage of the energy to have some sales. So you might do some shopping either in store or online on 4th of July and get some good deals. In the evening, you might start preparing for a barbecue. July is the heart of summer in America. Kids are out of school because of summer holidays. It's so hot On 4th of July, everyone is crossing their fingers and hoping for no rain because if you're going to have a barbecue, everyone wants to be outside. People will go to parks or their friend's house. Someone will fire up the grill, meaning turn the grill on, and grill hamburgers, hot dogs, and or steaks. Other common foods include macaroni and cheese, chips, corn on the cob, vegetables with some kind of dip, beer if you drink it, and maybe even some watermelon or ice cream for dessert. Because it's so hot during July, there will usually be some kind of outdoor activity involving water. So, for example, swimming. Or if you don't have a pool, setting up a sprinkler. A sprinkler is a tool that spreads the water out in a kind of fan shape. Kids will put on their bathing suits and run through the sprinkler. I definitely did this as a kid. Then, when it gets dark, everyone will gather together to watch fireworks. Now, who can control these fireworks depends on where you are. Some cities will allow people to buy and shoot off fireworks themselves. Some cities do not allow people to have fireworks themselves. In any case, usually the city government will organize a fireworks show and or people will shoot off fireworks in their street or local park. The fireworks don't typically last the entire night. It isn't like New Year's when the fireworks typically start at midnight. 4th of July fireworks usually start as soon as it gets dark and lasts maybe a few hours at most. But regardless, 4th of July can be a very nice holiday if you have friends or family you can celebrate it with. It's a time for community. So, 4th of July is an American holiday, but I know there are many countries that have their own Independence Day or some version of it. I have two questions for you. Does your country have an Independence Day? What did you know about the 4th of July before this episode? And did you learn something new about American history or culture today? Okay, that's 3 questions. Anyway, I hope you learned something new. If you did, make sure to follow for more episodes. I post a new episode every Tuesday just for you. As always, thanks for being here, friends. Until next time, bye.